Hey everybody, Aaron Blaise here, and last week I did a video on how to detach your hands from your arms in order to get better posing. Sometimes we get caught up in our arms and the anatomy and everything, and it affects our posing, and the poses get stiff. And I showed you a method where if you just get rid of those arms, forget them altogether, and just focus on getting the hands in the right place and then attaching the arms, then you could get better posing. It was a big hit. A lot of people liked it, but one of the biggest comments we got was, "Oh, that's great, Aaron, except I don't know how to draw hands." Well, I'm going to show you how to draw hands today. Okay, so this will be fun. And hands are difficult. They can be complex, but if you approach, I try to approach everything from the simplest, looking at it from the simplest way possible, and then working towards the details, okay? And that's the way you should approach all of your art. Start with the broad, work towards the detail, okay? Never start with that detail. You're going to get hung up. It's going to hurt you. But if you start by breaking down things into their basic shapes, their basic components, then you're going to end up having a lot better experience trying to draw what it is that you want to draw. In this case, we're going to draw hands. So one thing I want to talk about, let's just talk about how the hand relates to the arm a little bit, because we were talking about that the other day. I just want to show you, there's really just, we've got our shoulder pivot point. We've got our elbow pivot point. We've got our wrist pivot point. And then I always think of this as basically the main knuckle. We do have our knuckles here, and and that's how we have to grab things, and that's fine. But I really see this as the primary right here. So I really just see two points right there. And then we've got our elbow and our shoulder. And and actually, I'm going to take that back, because I am going to give you. Let's say we're going to get this third one here. The ends of the fingers, those knuckles, I don't bother with that when I'm posing a character. I don't think about it. It's too much detail. This is where we're going to get most of our expression. Okay, and remember, if you have trouble drawing hands, you've got two of them. One of them you need for drawing, the other one you can look at. And I'm going to show you some examples really quick of some of the hands I did for my anatomy class. And that's something I want to mention to you. If you want to get a more in-depth tutorial on all of this, I've got an entire course on my website on human anatomy, and specifically hands I've got in there. And I decided I want to give you guys a break. So if you, after watching this video, if you go to my website, creatureartteacher.com, and you put in the code, it's 2020 hands, 2020 hands, then you're going to get 20% off of your purchase. And that's not just the anatomy course. You'll also get 20% off on my bundle if you wanted to do anatomy and character design as well, which is, I've got another big course there. But enough of that. I want to jump over to animation really quick. And I want to show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. Let me just save this. Okay, so what I've done here is I've just got a held cell of this person, very rough sketch, facing towards us. And so what I was thinking about earlier, what I was trying to explain, is we got a pivot point. I'm just going to draw a pivot point right here. That's our shoulder. Comes out to an elbow right about there. Comes out to a wrist right about there. Now let's bend our wrist, hand, fingers. Okay? Now, if we decide to move it, we're just looking at these pivot points. And the reason I want to show you this is that just drawing these lines with the right distance between them, these pivot points, you can get it to feel like an arm or a wing or something like that, which is basically a specialized arm. So if we draw another arm down like so, and let's bend it a little bit more. We want to make sure that our lengths are consistent right there. You want to make sure that that radius is the same. And let's bring the hand up and straighten those fingers out. So now we get something that's coming down, almost like ballet, right? Or breakdancing or something like that. And so let's go to the next one. There's our pivot point here. Notice too that the pivot point, the shoulder can move up and down with the muscle. So I'm bringing that down just a little bit. Bringing the elbow right about here. Bringing the wrist right about here. And let's straighten that hand again. So you can see we get some nice movement right there. Now let's bring the arm up in the opposite direction. You bring it up. Let's bring that arm out. Keep that length consistent. Let's bend the elbow this way. Like that. And let's bend the wrist back the other way. So now we have this kind of fluid movement of the arm coming up. You see? And if we do another one, once again, I'm just showing you this to show how if you're drawing gestures, you can get away with a lot just drawing these lines. And then after you draw them, I want to show you what you can do. Like so. So the arm is coming up. Bringing that pivot point up. Bring it up here. Back up again. So now, if I come back here, I can just draw my arm. Draw the anatomy right onto that. And here, I'm just going to draw the side of the hand. Keep that thumb tucked in there. The thumb can be in here, let's say. We'll worry about the thumb later. Arm comes down, shoulders here. Notice how I'm thinking about, just very quickly, how that anatomy works over that hand, or over the line, I'm sorry, the lines here. There's that shoulder right there. And then let's bring that shoulder down. You notice how when I draw the hand this way in profile like this, it's kind of a wedge. It looks like, think of it this way. This is when I talk to my students about it. What do we got here? We got a duck. Here's a duck. There's his beak. Think of your hand shaped like that duck's beak. Okay? It's right there. We'll come up to the next arm. And here I'm going to reverse that. Get some of that shoulder up there. And now our elbow is leading the way. Like so. There we go. Let's bring this arm up here. We're going to get our deltoid really bunching up here. Leading with that elbow. And here's where we start to get a stretch in the pectoralis muscle right there. It ties in with the deltoid. But we're going to stick with the hands right now. And there's our thumb. Okay? So you can see just by drawing those lines and then throwing some anatomy over the top of that, you can get something that doesn't take a lot of work. And it's pretty convincing. Okay? The key to all of this, if you remember what I was talking about last week, is to not overcomplicate. Don't get caught up in a lot of stuff. Break it down. Break it down. And the more you can break it down, the better off you're going to be. See that stretch right there going into the pectoralis muscle? There, see that? We got an arm that actually moves just by drawing a couple of lines and getting that hand attached. So, you know, a lot of times the hand is reacting to what the arm is doing, as in what we're doing here. And then other times the hand is going to be leading what the arm is doing, like in a punch or something like that. Okay? But I just wanted you to see that, you know, how that hand relates to the arm. That was the main reason for taking you through this section of this exercise, is just for you to see how that hand relates to the arm. Now let's jump to the hands themselves. These are some drawings that I did a while back in 2016 when I did my anatomy course. These are my own hands. So you're going to see these are all right hands. They're all right hands because I'm left-handed. And this is one of the best exercises you can do, is to sit down and just draw your hands. Now, obviously, you know, I got in there and got fairly detailed and got all the chunky fat and everything else. But then when you get into character design and you want to take your characters and get into their hands, sometimes you want to simplify that. And these are some character hands I did for a film I was working on for Blue Sky. And these are some studies for the hands I was doing there. Now let me take this off because I want you to see that these are fairly, wow, okay, there we are. These are, you know, the poses are very, very similar to what I have here. Let me break that up. There's a fair number of the same poses, but you can see how I've gone in and simplified the anatomy, especially in areas like this, right here. If you look at this hand coming down, the arm coming down, how simplified we've got in here. This pose right here, how simplified that's become. The way that the straights and curves work against each other. We have straights, and that's something I'm going to talk about in just a second. All of these are just examples of taking what we already know from an anatomy standpoint, for me, drawing from life, and then simplifying it down for actual character hands. Okay? So that's, I want to bring another image down, and then we're going to get into it. One of the things to remember about hands is how rhythmic they are. Now, there's some very simple things to remember with hands, as far as how to break up the shape, how to build their shape. But then as far as how the fingers work in relation to the hand and themselves, there's some pretty interesting things that you'll discover. One of the things is, as you close your hand, you can see how, even if I try to do my fingers all together, notice how everything curves in on itself. And one thing I like to do is, you know, it's almost like a spiral. If you look up here on this drawing, everything kind of spirals in. I'm going to do a little drawing over the top of this. I'm going to go to a red drawing. But you can see, if we were to follow those fingers, everything spirals in. You can see it just kind of, if you follow that around, it just kind of, it spirals in on itself. We have this rhythm in our hands, in our bodies, and it's in nature. You're going to find it in nature. Look, as the fingers open, notice how they turn towards each other. These are things that you want to be aware of when you're drawing hands, you know, on characters. And there's some really simple things we can find too. If you look at, there's this nice straight lines right here against a lot of complexity over here. We're going to go over all of that. Okay, so let's jump into that really quick. And then, and like I said, remember, you can get a much more full version of this with my anatomy class at creatureartteacher.com and use the code 2020 hands and you'll get 20% off. So it's pretty cool. So, and that includes the character design course too, if you do the bundle. So let's create a new file. Oh, actually, really quick, I want to go back to our other hands, our first hands here. I'm going to go back to these. And like I said, I want you, as a result of this, go home and I'm sure you're at home now. Or you might be sitting on a train or something watching this. But when you get a chance to draw again, sit down and really observe your hands. Really observe them and draw them. Whether you're left-handed, right-handed, whatever, draw that other hand. And you're going to make some discoveries. Okay? And so let's enough of that. Let's jump in here. And let's just start from a two-dimensional standpoint of how a hand is put together. We were talking about it. I did a very quick lecture on one of my live streams the other day. We were calling these little meat paddles. So start with, it's basically, it's not quite a square. It's a little bit longer than a square. A little bit taller. Okay? But we're going to start with that. And if you kind of basically come down about a third from there, or a quarter, and then about halfway across here and draw a line across, that's going to be the meat for your thumb. All right, and then you've got basically a hollow that comes together, and some of us have, it depends on how our hands are put together, but, the wrinkles vary a little bit. But we basically got that going on. Then the next thing to think about is your hand basically comes up like so. Once again, it's a little less than halfway across. It comes up like this. All right, and that's the top of where your fingers are going to attach. Now, I always think of this as basically a straight line coming through here with a little bit of meat coming out, if you want to do that, a little flesh. But it's basically a straight line, which comes into our wrist right here. And we got our tendons and everything that come through that actually move our fingers. Okay? So here, right up here, right about there, is going to be our first knuckle for our thumb. You see that comes out just a little bit right there. Then we're going to come up. I'm just going to draw a very basic shape for now of the for the thumb. All right, so now we've got a hand, we got the palm, we got the thumb, and if we want to get really detailed, I can draw that knuckle that comes in like so, and then we got a little bit of meat that comes around this way. Comes down like that, and then we get into here, which has a couple of creases right in there. Now, our fingers. Our fingers are not quite as long as our palm. Don't draw them as long as your palm. They're a little bit shorter, so I'm going to bring my fingers up to about there. Right about there. And they're going to mimic, the ends of them are going to mimic our where they connect. So they're basically going to do this with a little bit of exaggeration. And you'll see a curve in that way and a curve in this way. All right, so they curve in towards each other. Those fingers do. All right, and just draw a line right from the tip, right into the tip there. Okay, so there's one finger, and that's the center of your middle finger. Here's the outside of our pinky and a pointer finger right there. And then we just got to find our ring finger, the center of our ring finger, which is going to be right about here. And so there is the rough, the rough layout of our hand. And then I'm going to draw this. Depending on how chunky your fingers are. Mine are kind of chunky. I'm a fat dude. I'll pull this in just a little bit because I didn't give myself enough room on my pinky. There's a hand right there. Now the last thing we want to do is define where those knuckles are. And just a little less than halfway out, we're going to hit those first knuckles. And then break that in half. And you've got your second knuckle right there. Okay? Now, how do we look at that? How do we look at that from an angle? Okay, that's how we're laid out from the bottom, looking at it from our palm. And if you want to flop that over, let's knock this back in opacity. If we want to flop that over and draw it from the top now, let's just copy the same silhouette. Show you a fun trick. So we're going to look at the same silhouette. The key to all of this with hands is practice. You need to observe. I've learned all this through observation. I've learned all of this through doing it on my own. Nobody taught me the stuff that I'm teaching you about hands right now. Nobody. So we're going to have a knuckle that comes in right about in here. And here, I'm going to knock this way back actually. Knuckle here. Here. And then what we get are we get these right in our wrist is a big tendon that holds all of our, it's like a rubber band that holds all of our tendons together. It's our carpal tunnel. And then these tendons kind of come through. That's why when you flex your fingers up, you can see these tendons kind of flex, okay? And then on top of the thumb, you're going to see the thumb kind of this way. Like so. And when you see fingers, as far as fingernails go, I'm going to draw a big finger. You know, make sure you observe. This is the key that a lot of people make mistakes with. Even details, you know, right down to the fingernails. Make sure you observe. Look at what your fingernails look like. Now, I know they look different on everybody, but they flare out like so. And then they have different lengths, obviously. But make sure you draw them right. And then, you know, they follow that form. So if you are looking at a finger that's foreshortened, first thing is, you know, you want to break it up into 3 parts, right? There's 3 knuckles. Let me blow that up for you. And then on the end of that knuckle is that fingernail, which comes back and sits like so. There's a finger pointing right at you. Okay? So we've got that hand there. Let's move all this over. So I've shown you the top of the hand and the bottom of the hand. Now, how do we draw it in a pose? Well, first of all, I try to think of my hand. I try to think of them as you know, we looked at this and even though we did it as a silhouette, as a flat, you know, how the hand sits like this, it still has form, it has thickness, it has shape. And so if you remember when I was showing you the animation, that palm has thickness. You can draw it this way. And we can draw it this way. But it's wedge shaped, right? It comes down, it's got, there's that meat there that I was talking about that goes into the palm, the wrist, the hand, the thumb. Okay, and then you can think of that, those fingers, I think of them as a paddle sometimes. And that's why we're calling them meat paddles. Because I think of that first knuckle as a break. So there's a hand this way. I could just draw that thumb, just attach that thumb right to it. like so. Then if I erase, whoops, too big. If I erase in here, now you can see I've got a hand. Okay, and then that just attaches to a wrist. See, this is going to come around, and our wrist comes down like so. Okay, I'm going to draw those fingers a little longer. All right. Now you can also think of them, let me shrink that up. You can think of the fingers as little tubes attached to this little meat puppet, meat paddle. I always think of it too as kind of curved this way. This being the top of the hand. Here's the thumb coming out off the back. You know, if you got this, you got 1, 2, 3. Whoops, it's not drawing. 3, 4. Okay, there's where your fingers are going to attach, right in here. Okay, so here I'm just going to very quickly put a finger there, maybe a finger here, finger coming this way, and maybe bringing that pinky up. You know, just messing with the pose. And now just think of those tubes, and remember your differences in length. Remember, the hand basically goes this way, and your fingers follow that shape, right? When you got your hand like that. And so if we follow the fingers down and think of it, you know, there's a knuckle there, there's a knuckle there, there's a knuckle there, here's a knuckle, like so. And I'm actually drawing a little bit backwards because what we want to do is work our way towards the background. But that's okay. We'll just do it like this. So there's another finger there. And then our pinky finger, we'll just bring up like so. Just making sure that we've got all the right lengths on everything. And then you can bring that wrist down like so, like this is like it's a dramatic pose or something like that. Okay, so if I knock this back and decide to draw over the top of it, I end up with something like this. I'm going to draw it very quickly. And notice that I'm getting rid of a lot of the details. If I want to throw in a pinky, you know, a fingernail, I can throw in a fingernail. Or maybe a knuckle right in here. Knuckle right in here. But I'm really getting rid of the details. Simplifying. Don't get caught up in those details. Here's your biggest knuckle right there in your middle finger. Here's how they overlap. Like so. And notice how that skin kind of catches up here between the fingers. Just like that. Notice how quickly we drew that just by thinking about simple shapes. That's the key. Very simple shapes. And then really foreshortening can get really tricky as well. Let me take this and move that off to the side. I'm going to combine those layers. Now sometimes we'll get an angle on the hands that the fingers can throw us off a little bit. What if we have a hand that's really coming towards us? You know, we got the curve of the palm, you know, the meat paddle I was talking about. Let's say the thumb comes down like a big dramatic pose. So there's our thumb coming off, but then everything else, like a finger here, got a finger here coming towards us. Finger there. Well, notice how what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build it out. Like so. I know this finger is going to curve in because we've already talked about how our fingers, if you look to the left over here, our fingers curve in towards each other. So I know this is going to curve in a little bit. Just a little bit because it's coming almost straight out. Now this guy is going to, we're going to see a little bit more of it because of perspective. I'm thinking about perspective. This finger here, a ring finger, seeing a little bit more of that. And then here, our pinky, we could even break it, you know, get really dramatic with it and bring it way down here. And that one we're seeing a good chunk of from the side. And then here, we're going to get a little bit of the meat of the palm. Like so. So now if I knock that back, I come up here. It's all about don't get caught up. And I know I've been doing this for years, and I know I go a little bit quicker, but I don't want you to get caught up in really looking at those details. You know, try to break it down into its basic shape. And even though I've got these little bits of meat attached on here, this is still, the shape of it is still this. Coming back, that's still the shape of that part of the hand. And then there's the meat stuck underneath. So here, our fingers will come out. There's a knuckle here, a knuckle here, a knuckle back here. Okay. And then what's really cool is once you get that fingernail in there, then it really makes sense. And you go, oh, okay, now I understand. And you're going to see that the finger is shaped a little bit wide. So there's finger number one. Let's get that other fingernail in there. Let me blow this up a little bit so you can see it a little better. And then here, I'm not going to draw it like really dark right here because there's not a hard crease right here with the finger where it attaches. There's finger number two. Remember, we're just thinking about tubes, 3 sections to those tubes. That makes up a finger when it's foreshortened. You know, here's the third one, the third finger. And you get those fingernails. Once you get that fingernail in there, then you go, oh, okay, now I understand its orientation. There we go. There's that third finger. And then when we get to our pinky, and remember, don't be afraid to look at your own hand. Look at it. Learn from it. So there. Look how quickly we drew this hand, foreshortened. There's a little bit of meat right there. And this hand over here too as well. I wanted you to see that, you know, this kind of stuff here, it's just thinking about this shape. There's your shape first. And then think about how those fingers attach, and then you've got a thumb that comes out. And just think of the thumb as just another wedge. And opposite of the thumb, you can get nice straights on that wrist. See, like that? So when you saw me drawing the other day, and I was drawing these hands in different positions, that's really all I was thinking about. When I'm drawing hands quickly, I really just... I think about, oh, okay, here's a thumb. And right there, there's a hand. And I think about how that hand then relates to the arm. I can fill in the rest later. This is how I do my shorthand. You know, when I'm sitting there doing sketches like what I was doing last week for you on the detached hands. We can do this kind of stuff later. You can add all the details later. Let's do a fist really quick because I want you to understand that too. So once again, we're going to have our little meat paddle. Okay, so it comes across like so. But now we want to do a fist. All right, so here's the back of the hand, and then one of the things to think about is our fingers and our knuckles. Really, they don't. You can make them go further, but they really don't bend much more than 90 degrees. Okay, so if I'm making a fist, I'm gonna, you know, this is gonna be 90 degrees right here. Okay, that break, and then this bend right here, coming into the fist. That's going to be about 90 degrees, okay? And then it comes in like that. Okay, so there's our first, think of it as kind of being squared. Like so. Now here, remember our knuckles, you know, on our thumb can do this. This is one of the things that we can do. If you look at my hand, this is one of the things that we can do that make us special. It allows us to grab things and hold things. We can move our thumb in and out, okay? That's something a lot of other animals don't have the ability to do. And so that being said, in order to make a fist, we got to turn that knuckle in. So there's a knuckle right here that comes across, and then that thumb comes in and goes across this way. Just like so. And then that kind of creases into the meat that we have on our hand. It bunches up that meat right there, okay? So if I draw my thumbnail, it comes out like so, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm building the fist. So I'm thinking about that. I've got this. Now remember I was talking about how the fingers and kind of spiral. You know, they spiral in. And so that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to think about that. And then as the knuckle comes around, it's going to come a little bit more this way and kind of come in like this. And then the next knuckle kind of comes down this way and goes in like this. We're going to see a little bit more of it as it comes in. And then our pinky comes in this way. And then we've got a little bit of fat right there. I kind of, or at least on my hand. Like so. So you got a fist by doing this kind of spiraling pattern that goes in like so. And then you just gotta, there, so you got a fist right there. Okay? Think of it, and then if you just want to do it in shorthand, like I do here, very often it's just boom. Thumb comes across. You know, and that's it. That's all I worry about. And I sometimes will throw in the fingers like that, but I just very quickly, I don't worry about, you know, some people will see a scribble like that and go, oh, he can't draw hands. You know what? I know how to draw hands. I don't worry about it because that's not the thing to worry about right now. And so that's what you need to get over when you're doing your drawings, is worry about the thing you need to worry about when you need to worry about it, if that makes sense. You know, there's a time for a quick scribbly drawing, and then there's a time for it to be accurate. And so the biggest thing about hands I want you to remember is really observe them. Sit down and draw them. For all of you out there that say, okay, I can't draw hands, it's because you haven't drawn them enough. And so the biggest thing is sit down and draw them as often as you can. Simplify. Remember, let me go back to these character hands really quick. You know, even though there's still a complexity to these, they're simplified. You don't need every little nuance to the knuckle and all of that. And try to make them dynamic. Find the places that you can break and really push those expressions. Get big changes in the fingers, that sort of thing. Be dynamic with the expressions. Try fat hands, try skinny hands, try long fingers, stubby fingers, all of that, and get a sense of that. And then, like I said, really observe the rhythms of the hand, how we get the spirals and how the hand tapers and all of that. These are the things that over time, as you observe them, you will get better and better at recalling it and being able to draw it. And you'll be able to draw it like that, okay? So remember, if you want more detailed instruction on the entire human anatomy, go to my website, creatureartteacher.com, and use the code 2020HANDS, and you're going to get an extra 20% off of my anatomy course. Or if you want to buy the anatomy bundled with my character design course, you get 20% off of that too. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really love teaching this kind of stuff. Go out, put some beauty back into the world. Take what you've learned by drawing hands, go out and draw some beautiful hands, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks. Bye.